Imagine it's late April and you should be halfway through your harvest, but instead you've barely managed to ship 20%. Today we're looking at a citrus industry pushed to the limit. South African growers are currently battling unprecedented rains, soaring shipping costs, and the complex logistics of navigating around global conflict zones. But with a major new trade deal on the horizon and a massive orange crop just weeks away, can the industry turn the tide, or is a market crash inevitable? Let's dive into the high-stakes world of global citrus trade.
Welcome back to The Explainer. It's May 4th, 2026, and today we're stepping into a real-time strategic briefing on the South African citrus industry. We're going to look really closely at how this massive agricultural sector is dealing with, well, a perfect storm. We're talking unprecedented rainfall, skyrocketing shipping costs, and how they're executing these incredibly rapid strategic pivots to new markets, like China, literally just to stay afloat. Okay, let's dive into this. The epic scale of South African citrus orchards set against these stunning mountain backdrops is absolutely breathtaking. But right now, it's also ground zero for a major crisis. As we speak, these massive operations are facing an extraordinary combination of severe, localized climate anomalies and intense macro-logistical shifts across the globe. It's a true test of agricultural endurance. Here's a quick roadmap for today. We'll trace this whole journey from muddy, rain-soaked orchards all the way through global shipping shocks, ending up at massive trade breakthroughs in China. Part 1. The 2026 Citrus Squeeze. Squeezed between weather and water. So farmers right now are caught in a brutal vice grip. From above, you've got intense operational pressures, mostly an unprecedented amount of rain causing massive harvest delays. And from below, pushing upward, you have these crazy logistical pressures, namely the necessity of completely avoiding the Strait of Hormuz, which is sending shipping costs through the roof. Producers are caught right in the middle. The only way out? Highly agile market pivots. Section 2. Unprecedented rain paralyzes lemons. Let's look at the muddy reality on the ground. The raw reality of these freshly picked lemons hides a staggering delay. Jacobus von Staden from Sunfed reports they are experiencing the absolute highest rainfall they have ever seen. To put that into perspective, in a normal year, by late April, they'd be about 55% of the way through packing their crop. Right now, they're stuck at just 20%. That is a massive 35% gap in volume. Now, you might be wondering, why not just pick the lemons in the rain? Well, the answer is oleoso, short for oleocellosis. It's basically severe oil spotting damage on the citrus rind that happens when you handle wet fruit. Because of this, teams are forced into this incredibly frustrating start-stop waiting game. They can only rush out and harvest when the rain completely stops, otherwise they'd ruin the whole batch. And this delay creates a really precarious market risk. Because supply is choked off right now, demand is strong and prices are actually holding firm. But there's a looming threat. The Eastern Cape is just starting its own lemon harvest. So when the rain finally breaks, we could see a sudden flood of volume that will almost certainly tank those firm prices. It's kind of like a massive traffic jam that suddenly clears up all at once. Section 3. Absorbing global shipping shocks and rerouting the supply chain. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive reallocation of market share. Historically, about 55% of these early shipments went to the Middle East. That has plummeted to 33%. Meanwhile, shipments to Europe have actually surged from 12% up to 19%. And keep in mind, sending more fruit to Europe isn't exactly a walk in the park. It remains incredibly tricky because of their super strict regulations on citrus black spot. But you'll notice shipments to the Middle East haven't stopped entirely. Why is that? Well, the rising shipping costs from avoiding the Strait of Hormuz are actually being absorbed downstream. International clients in the Middle East and Southeast Asia still really want the fruit, and at least for now, they are totally willing to swallow those pricier, much more complicated freight costs to get it. Moving to Section 4, the China tariff catalyst, a true geopolitical breakthrough. So for years, South Africa faced intense historical friction with China. We're talking rigorous cold treatment mandates, incredibly strict color requirements, and punishingly high tariffs. It meant almost no lemons or raw grapefruit went there. But 2026 brings a massive unlock, the imminent removal of these tariffs. This duty-free access is an absolute game changer, shattering barriers that have been in place for years. And this brilliantly illustrates how that new frictionless access is playing out. An astonishing 80% of South Africa's processing-grade grapefruit is now being routed directly to China, and they're doing it with unbelievable efficiency, shipping the fruit straight in raw bulk bins. They've completely rewired their export strategy to kick this newly opened door wide open. Actually, quick caveat here. It's important to note this China pivot is mainly for processing-grade fruit. If we look at the higher grade, class 1 and 2 grapefruit, producers are still relying heavily on traditional markets. Europe is taking the lion's share at 67%, and Russia sits at 13%. Though experts are pointing out that the Russian market has quickly become saturated, which makes that European lifeline absolutely crucial right now.
Part 5. Bracing for Valencia oversupply. The looming threat.
So I have to ask you, will Valencia survive the squeeze? Industry experts are, frankly, highly skeptical. The harvest is set to kick off in just the next 2 to 4 weeks, and the outlook is incredibly complex and pretty daunting. Here's why everyone is so on edge about this impending squeeze. South Africa is expecting a noticeably larger domestic Valencia crop this year across all regions. And at the exact same time, this massive yield is going to collide head-on with leftover Egyptian product still sitting in the market. Haunting all of this is the memory of last year, where a similar oversupply ended disastrously in India and Bangladesh. But there is a silver lining. The United States continues to exempt Western Cape oranges from tariffs. This is a massive lifeline. It effectively isolates the Western Cape volume from those completely saturated northern markets, giving at least one region a clear, profitable path forward. Finally, Section 6, Agility as the Asset, the ultimate blueprint. So the crucial point is how each unique hurdle demanded a totally unique pivot. Lemons faced rain, so producers pivoted to the EU. Grapefruit faced stagnating global demand, so they aggressively routed processing fruit to China. Valencias face a massive incoming crop, so they're leaning heavily into the U.S. tariff exemption for the Western Cape. Every single challenge was met with a decisive strategic response. When you look at a sprawling facility like this, you aren't just looking at a farm anymore. You're looking at a masterclass in real-time supply chain reallocation. These operators are constantly taking live weather data, shifting shipping logistics, and fresh geopolitical policy unlocks, and applying them instantly on the ground. That's how they survive. I really want to emphasize this quote because it perfectly summarizes our whole explainer today. Agricultural resilience is not just about weather mitigation, it is about real-time, lateral supply chain reallocation. In 2026, being a successful farmer literally means being a master of global logistics. Which leaves us with this final thought. You've seen how the South African citrus industry is navigating this crazy maze of weather disasters, shipping crises, and new global tariffs in real time. So I'll leave you with this. As climate and geopolitics continue to shift at lightning speed, is your industry ready to pivot its supply chain this fast? Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.
Welcome to the debate. So right now in South Africa, there are citrus farms where over 80% of the early lemon harvest is literally just trapped on the trees.
Right, by this completely unprecedented rainfall we've been seeing.
Exactly. So today we are asking, can clever global trade policies actually save an industry when Mother Nature, well, refuses to cooperate? I will be arguing that strategic market pivots and new policy unlocks basically guarantee industry resilience.
And I'll be arguing that the agronomic realities on the ground, specifically the extreme weather and operational bottlenecks, they create physical limits that, frankly, no policy can fix.
Okay, so let's get right into those physical limits.
Yeah, because the reality on the ground right now is just operational paralysis. Due to the sheer duration of this rain, only about 20% of the early lemon harvest is currently packed and shipped. Means, practically speaking, is that the second the rain stops, harvest teams are forced into this frantic catch-up mode. And that rush drastically spikes the risk of oleo damage.
Right, which is when the essential oils in the peel leak out and actually burn the fruit.
Exactly. It physically burns the rind. You can have all the trade agreements in the world, but Mother Nature ultimately dictates what leaves the farm.
I hear that, but, well, that oleo damage you just mentioned is exactly why the recent removal of China's tariffs is such a massive lifeline.
How so?
Well, because we don't have to worry as much about the cosmetic perfection of those peels anymore. Historically, getting into China meant navigating massive friction, right? Like strict cold treatment where fruit had to be chilled for weeks to kill pests, and rigorous color requirements.
Sure, the historical friction was very high.
Right. But now, with duty-free access, the industry has immediately reallocated. We are suddenly routing 80% of our processing-grade grapefruit directly to China. And we've even bumped our European lemon market share from 12% up to 19%. I mean, that agility is what secures the future.
Okay, but a listener might hear, 80% of grapefruit is going to China and assume that's this massive win.
Isn't it?
Not if you look at how it's being shipped. We are sending processing-grade fruit in raw bulk bins. I mean, that is not a premium export victory. It's a salvage operation.
A salvage operation?
Yes, because selling top-tier Class 1 and 2 grapefruit in Europe and Russia is getting incrementally harder every single year due to stagnating global demand. So routing this lower-grade fruit to China, it's just a survival tactic to move volume.
A survival tactic. Maybe, but it acts like a crucial pressure valve for the entire supply chain. When traditional markets restrict, this new China processing pipeline means the system doesn't just burst. And that agility extends to shipping routes, too.
You mean the Red Sea situation?
Exactly. Look at how they've handled the logistics crisis. They safely dodged the choke point of the Strait of Hormuz by rerouting ships around the Cape of Good Hope, which successfully dropped Middle East market exposure from 55% down to 33%.
Right.
And by negotiating with clients to absorb those rising shipping costs downstream, they've insulated the growers. Plus, they are leveraging U.S. tariff exemptions specifically for Western Cape Valencias, isolating that volume from saturated northern markets. I mean, that's an industry managing supply with incredible precision.
That assumes a level of control that simply doesn't exist on a farm. You praise that 19% volume bump for lemons in Europe, but have you considered the mechanics of getting it there?
I assume it's challenging.
It's incredibly precarious. Europe has very strict regulations against citrus black spot. It's a fungal disease, and this relentless rain we've had, it creates the perfect humid breeding ground for that exact fungus. It makes it nearly impossible to meet those strict import standards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and plus, we are facing an imminent domestic market squeeze. The Eastern Cape lemon harvest is just starting, which threatens a sudden volume surge that could just crash prices locally.
But isn't that where strategic volume isolation comes in? Like, by diverting those Western Cape Valencias to the U.S., aren't they preemptively preventing a glut at home?
The problem is the sheer timing. That larger domestic Valencia crop is going to overlap directly with residual Egyptian citrus that is, well, still sitting in the global market.
Because Egypt had a late harvest.
Exactly. Their fruit is occupying the exact shelf space our Valencias need. You simply cannot outmaneuver a physical glut of fruit on a global scale. The pressure valve breaks when there is nowhere left to vent.
So we're really looking at a fundamental clash here between real-time supply chain reallocation and inescapable agricultural constraints. Though I think we can agree that the removal of the China tariff remains a historic structural advantage for South Africa.
Oh, absolutely. It is a monumental unlock for the industry's long-term architecture, without question. My divergence is strictly about the immediate physics of the situation. I just remain unconvinced that market agility can truly outpace a massive rain-induced harvest deficit and, frankly, severely inflating logistics costs.
It really highlights the staggering complexity of modern agricultural exports. Producers are constantly forced to weigh international policy against the sheer force of nature.
Very true.
It leaves us wondering, when the supply chain pressure valve is pushed to its absolute limit, does strategic maneuvering still save the day? Or does the harvest itself decide the outcome? There is a lot more to explore here as the season unfolds.